The year of the return continues, Coverkillernation. How you guys doing? Here for another 2011 album review. Now, already this year we've spoken about numerous returns by many different bands, whether they be in rock or alternative or heavy metal or whatever. We've talked about bands that have come back from a number of year hiatus, such as the Foo Fighters, such as Incubus, such as Exhumed, such as Autopsy, and now we're going to add another one to the list. We're going to add Carnival's Forever, the long-awaited return album by Decapitated, which will be released on Tuesday, July the 12th, at stores everywhere. I thought it was going to be the 19th, since we always seem to get things a week later here. We're actually getting it earlier than Europe, which is kind of cool. Now, of course, if you don't know the story of what happened to Decapitated, let me just give you a brief history of the band itself. This was a band that was formed by a pair of brothers that were in their teens and were really hailed as one of the top technical death metal acts, and really really were hailed as one of the real revivalists of the death metal genre in general. Back in the early 2000s, whenever they were first getting started, there were many magazine articles that called them death metal's salvation, because of course death metal had lost a good number of bands, especially after losing Death/Control Denied with Chuck Schuldenier's untimely death. Now, in 2007, after releasing a couple of very successful albums, unfortunately there was a car accident that claimed the life of Vitek, the brother of Vogg, who is considered to be the mastermind of the band, the mastermind guitar player. Vitek was the drummer. And the singer at the time also was in the car and slipped into a coma himself. So the band was put on an indefinite hiatus for now a period of about 4 years. However, Vogg decided to restart the project. He said that's exactly what Vitek would want. There was a lot of old material that he and Vitek had still recorded, and there was just a desire to continue onward. And now we have Carnival is Forever, the long-awaited album by Decapitated. Now, there's a lot of differences here. We have a new bass player, we have a new drummer, we have a new vocalist in a guy who's going by the name of Rasta. And the first difference that you're going to notice on this album is that his vocal range is a little bit higher of a register than vocalists in the past. You'll notice more of a, really deep death metal growl on older albums such as Winds of Creation or The Negation. But on this one, you're going to hear a little bit more of a higher register, and he holds his notes a little bit more. Kind of like what Lord Worm used to do with Cryptasy, only not nearly as brutal. It's a little bit more clean. It's not clean at all. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not clean as though you can hear exactly the word that he's speaking. However, by making the comparison with Lord Worm, he's definitely the cleaner of the two. The second thing that you're going to notice here is the difference in the band a little bit. I mean, this is something where the first 3 albums were really very tight. There was a lot of technical wizardry and technical mastery going on, and that's something that you also got with their previous record of this, Organic Hallucinations. However, with this album, it seems as though they're kind of continuing in that little bit more of a groove-laden direction that they started with Organic, and it was something that some fans were a little bit on the fence about, but overall they really enjoyed the album. They enjoyed the vocals, they enjoyed what everyone was able to input together, and after all, Decapitated were becoming legends of the genre, so it was something where it was kind of accepted as a maturity process. This is an album that almost seems like they tried to take that mature leap even further, and some of the songs sound a little bit, I don't know, either rushed or a little hokey. I mean, they're really good tracks, don't get me wrong. However, there are some moments where it just seems like it's a little overly simplistic, almost as though longtime Decapitated fans may be disappointed at the fact that the technical mastery doesn't show itself on every single second of the record. And well, for that I have to say, don't expect that, because if you hear that on record after record after record, you're just going to accuse it of being a carbon copy. No one's ever satisfied. But there are some great moments on this record. On the title track, Carnival is Forever, there's a nice little passage where there's just some soft guitar going on in the background. It's an 8-minute long song, and a lot of people may consider this to be overbearing or could have easily been cut out. Where's the brutality? But this is actually a nice little pause. It's something that I really enjoy whenever bands kind of take their time to do this, because it builds an atmosphere, it builds a longing. It's a prolonging, to kind of steal a Triptychon reference there. And you eventually, whenever you go back into your main idea or into the latter part of the song, it makes that part stand out. That middle part is also going to stand out in itself, because you know it's going to be there. And the funny thing about this track is, after listening to it a couple times, you still kind of build that feeling of anticipation, even though you know what's coming, which is nice. On the latter part of the album, there's a couple songs that really sound almost like the riffs are Opethian. And if you don't know what I mean by Opethian, it resembles Opeth a little bit. Track 6 is a great example of this. However, I would say, and this might just be me being a little sentimental, but I think the best moment on this whole entire album is track number 8, which is entitled Silence. Silence is nothing more than an instrumental, kind of a jazzy, very depressing, bluesy style of instrumental that Vogg plays on his guitar with the band kind of swirling around him a little bit. And it's obvious that this is his kind of tribute or memorial to Vitek. And this was something that, knowing the history of what this band has had to go through, and knowing that it's now been a 4-year process for them to get over everything and kind of resituate themselves and move on with the vision that Decapitated kind of had, this was kind of moving. This was really touching, and it really just, it reminds me a lot of a song like Voice of the Soul by Death, which was written before Chuck was dead, had passed away, should I say. Or it also reminds me of Black Gives Way to Blue by Alice in Chains, which of course that entire record was dedicated to Lane Staley, but that song in general was supposed to be the big, the grand reveal that this was all about, you know, this is all for Lane, and that the lyrics really reflect it. Silence does not have any lyrics, as the name would suggest. However, the music is something where you really get attached to it very easily. It's very sentimental, and as a fan, going through this process along with the band, maybe you did not know them as closely as they knew one another. In fact, I know you didn't. But still, that is something where it moves you, because you follow these guys. They've almost become like your musical family. So you really have to have a grand degree of appreciation for that. Overall, I think Decapitated fans may be a little disappointed with this record. But I'm going to implore them to do one thing, and that is look at the band, look at what they've lost, look at what they've gone through. It is not the same band as before. This is a band that has gone through a lot of turmoil and is going through maybe some growing pains with a new lineup. And at the same time, this is still a period of time where things are a little bit out of balance. So for this album, if you're not too satisfied with it, I understand that you may be disappointed, but give them another album before you just immediately jump off the ship. This is an album that doesn't really match up to the others, but it's still a solid 7.5 out of 10. I don't consider this to be a full-out disappointment. In fact, there's a couple of these tracks that I really dig. And I think that Silence alone should give you a reason to really love this album, simply because they were willing to write that kind of memorial that really has that solemn touch to it, as opposed to just writing some sort of, you know, typical Decapitated song. They decided to do something different, and for that, you gotta give them props. So, 7.5 out of 10 is solid. It might not be as solid as, you know, a Winds of Creation or an Organic Hallucinations, but hey, you gotta kind of take the good with the bad. Thank you, Decapitated, for coming back. Thanks for delivering us a pretty decent record. And, as always, rest in peace, Vitek. Nothing else really to say. Thanks, guys.